Call to order this meeting of the Polk City Parks Commission for October 2nd. Can I get a roll call?
Otis.
Here.
Converse here. Blaney. Holland. Not yet. Savage.
Here.
Ten Maple.
Here.
Jablonski.
Here. Next up item is approval of the minutes from our August 7th meeting. Can I get a motion?
So motion?
I have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Otis.
Here. Yes.
Converse. Yes. Delaney. Savage.
Yes.
Ten Maple. Jablonski.
Yes.
Okay. Jason, number 4, do we have any audience items?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving right along then. Item number 5 on the agenda this evening is a presentation by Mitch Brazier. Is that correct? Yep. Eagle Scout candidate. You want to come on up? Tell us what you have to discuss this evening.
Hello, my name is Mitch Brazier. I live at 920 Timberline Drive, Polk City, Iowa. I'm here to talk to you today about an Eagle project I have been working with Jason Grant. The project entails putting 2 message boards into 2 parks, 12 Oaks and Marina Cove. There is a current message board that is in Marina Cove that is currently in the state of disrepair and has a lot of community complaints. Our goal is to put 2 new message boards in, and
You're doing fine.
You're doing
totally
good.
fine.
Great.
Take a breath. It's okay.
put in concrete footings and mount 2 posts to them.
Okay.
The schedule is to put in concrete in the coming weeks and to mount the boards as soon as they get your notice.
Okay.
Do you have questions about the
What content is the sign going to have on it?
project?
And have they been developed or designed? Just curious.
It has not been designed yet. The current plan is to have water held and fishing information on.
On your notes here, it says reduce concerns from neighbors and calls to City Hall. What have the calls been that the old sign is poorly?
Absolutely. Yep. So, actually, a lot of the concerns from the neighbors are in regards to the algae growth that happens like clockwork. So part of this education component here is when we develop it, talking about the water quality, we're going to talk about why that algae is here. This is a storm water detention. This is not crystal clear water. There is fertilizer from your yard, everybody's yard, and that fertilizer, when it gets there, it's going to do something, and it's going to sustain some sort of life, and algae usually wins that battle. So it's going to reference why there's algae here, what this body of water is doing, what it's not doing, just so kind of everybody has a better idea and expectations as to what that pond does.
So will they,
Didn't your intern have part of her presentation about how that algae was actually healthy and good?
Yes, yeah, it is unsightly, I agree, but yes, it does have some benefit, with dissolved oxygen going back in the water, things like that. So, yes, we definitely have some nuts and bolts from Maddie's internship, and those components will likely be on the signage that's going to go into Mitch's project.
so you or the city will prepare the signage and Mitch is gonna build the actual
Yes, sir.
sign? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess my question was this: we were going to incorporate, and I think you just kind of verified that based on some of the stuff that your intern had presented to us earlier this year, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Looks great. Excited to see this because it's something that Maddie brought up. One thing that she brought up, are you familiar with her presentation at all, Mitch?
No.
Okay. Should share that with you, but they also had a receptacle for like line and excess line and hooks and things I think that'd be ideal to maybe look at adding this too as a relatively low cost addition to something like this. I'm familiar with like some of the public fishing areas, they have PVC tubes set up to deposit cutoff line and things like that.
I know
Yes.
Big Creek State Park has some, if you want a good example. It's just
I've
like a
seen
little,
few that-
yeah.
Do you have to raise funds, or this is the city, will he have to raise funds for this, or will the city provide the,
Yeah, so the city is doing some contributions based on my budgets for those two parks, but Mitch is taking care of the rest.
the actual construction?
Yeah, actual construction and some other minor
Great.
costs along the way.
Is that by raising funds then?
The boards will be provided by Jason Thuran and the city, and all other costs will be handled from other independent sources.
Okay.
And on Mitch's handout, you can see the message board that we did choose. In terms of area, it's probably going to be pretty similar, just more of a portrait orientation than landscape as before. But no, these are much more secure, kind of like a lock. So they'll be a lot more secure. So hopefully we won't get any wasps setting up camp in these like our former one. So no, really excited, and Maddie did great things figuring this out, and it was a perfect time. It's like she handed the baton to Mitch, and Mitch and I have been working, and it's a great benefit for the city. It's a great benefit for Mitch. So it's been great working with an Eagle Scout candidate. My first time doing it, so it's been great. I've learned a lot too.
First of all, I'm sorry I was tardy. I got caught in traffic from road construction in Ankeny. But I also wanted to give you a brief shout out. I know that your public speaking's not your jam. I know you personally, so I know that this was a reach for you. So shout out for you, because that's a big part of Eagle Scout project, is just extending yourself into areas that maybe aren't your strength areas, but it's still something where you give back. So kudos to you, because that's hard to do.
You did more than fine. You did
I know, I'm saying you did a great job. That doesn't mean it wasn't nerve-wracking before it happened.
Guess what? It's just as nerve-wracking for us as it is for you. So,
You did extremely well.
Yeah.
Let us know if you need anything from us in the meantime.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mitch.
Good luck with your project.
That's okay. Thanks again. No, enjoy the last of the nice weather.
Thank you again.
All right.
Ashley, just so you're aware, Kelly is at the cross-country meet, but I know have her listening in on my phone.
Perfect.
Yep.
I'll try to be a little bit louder. All right, item number 6, summarize Q3 2023 program cost recovery.
Yep, in front of you is how programs did for the months of July, August, and September. Overall, I'm quite happy with everything. Our youth came in actually exceeding expectation at 118, and breaking it down a little bit more granular. The per hour cost of all of these was between $5 and $6, so we're not extorting anything. Like, it's still really good value. Just some of those higher numbers, All-Star Sports Camp, there's very low overhead. We're just using fields and equipment that I have built up that is meant for everything. So again, there's really no specific costs except staff on those. Moving over to adult, this was our biggest co-ed softball league since Parks and Rec inherited it after COVID. So we had 7 teams this year. One thing to note, and I have there in my little analysis, I did have to cancel the Fall Bags League this year. After reaching out to a lot of my regulars, just Thursday nights now with their kids being a little bit older, there were flag football commitments. So I'll be working with the host site to see if there's something else we can do for our fall leagues going forward, because the appetite is very much still there. So we just need to figure out something that works for all parties involved.
So it's just a conflict with that particular Thursday.
And then, yeah, senior programming. It might not look like much, but 9 participants is our biggest one yet, and I'm tickled pink to have that. So, just yeah, again, those should come in about 10 to 40%, seeing as it is a large community benefit. So, 32, almost 33%. I'm quite pleased. So I'd be happy to ask any questions about any grouping or any specific program that you guys see there.
I just have one question. I know a lot of our reach to the community is through social media. Do we know as a city what the best mechanism is for reaching seniors and older adults in our community?
Sure. It's a lot of old-fashioned advertising. I have found my biggest one is word of mouth. But I do distribute flyers at, well, the apartments here that are aimed at that demographic. Also, I do go up and routinely talk with those groups at the library that would be interested in these as well.
Is there a way to reach older adults in mass? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I always wonder about the people who are largely homebound and maybe don't hear by word of mouth. That's not necessarily a question you need to answer like at this moment, but I've been really thinking about that a lot lately. I know that there's a gal that goes to the same person who cuts my hair, and every Friday, would it not be for her, she drives to her house, picks her up, brings her back to the salon, does her hair, and then takes her back home. But if not for her, there are some times when that's the first person she's actually engaged with for a week. So I'm just trying to think outside the box of ways that we could engage those folks.
Yeah.
You know, Ashley, I think that's a challenge we have across the board with everything in the city, right? Is we have so many different demographics and different ways to reach people. And how do you do it that's not cost prohibitive, right? For your example, you know, I've had conversations with people, and really, it sounds like, you know, years ago we used to have a local newspaper, and that used to be the vehicle for communication. And with the lack of that, it's really not cost. Again, I don't know. I'm just guessing that it's not cost effective to do mailings or something like that for programs,
Right.
like targeted mailings or anything like that.
This past year, the 3 months leading into the summer brochure, which is the biggest brochure, I did do a half page in the North Polk Living.
Oh, yep.
So I do know that is a good paper copy that does go
And
to
that's
every.
traditional print that everybody still.
Yeah,
That was where I
but
was going as well, is they lay out the stuff that happens up at Chester Park just as like a regular column, and the stuff that happens at the library. And I don't recall seeing, do we have stuff for the parks that gets printed alongside that stuff?
no,
And
it's
can we?
yes, it's been a discussion.
Okay.
It's yet to happen. So I will reach back out and
Is that
remind.
on our side or their side?
We've had conversations. All I can do is communicate, but then I'm not the one printing.
Right. I do have an existing connection with them. Would it be helpful for someone on the Parks Commission to reach out?
It could. I think still I'm just new enough that I think it's been beat into them. Like every month they look at the library's
100%.
webpage and they look at it. So it's been a learning curve to, kind of look at my brochure. So, but yeah, no, I think that would definitely be an opportunity to highlight some of those things.
And plus, rather than totally reinvent the wheel, we're not the only community facing challenges, right?
Absolutely.
How do other communities do it? And I guess real quick, Jason, I did have one question, if I may.
Yeah.
For your senior programs, I'm just curious because we've never talked about it. Maybe other people up here know the answer to it, but how do you come up with your programming? Is it, what's your bench of information for programming? Is it talking to other communities on what they do? Do you do an outreach to figure out what programs there's appetite for? Or?
Yep, absolutely. So my prior employment was in Urbandale, where I was a recreation coordinator specifically for 55 plus programming. So a lot of what I've offered here is things that had been offered there. So kind of just practical experience. But now, no, I do use, I guess kind of in the state of Iowa, I do have colleagues statewide. Kind of the two biggies when it comes to senior programming is Urbandale and it is Iowa City. They have the largest presence and the largest reach. So they are kind of the resident experts. I certainly look at what they're doing. Some of it, if it's clear on the eastern side, it's not always cost conducive for me to do it here with such small numbers. But two, also when I do my trips, when we're in the car, we don't sit in silence. So,
Conversation.
I absolutely pick their brains, and they've given a lot of these good ideas that we've had and we've seen growth in. So
I mean, I was just gonna say, I keep thinking in the back of my mind with, a couple of years down the road, if that long, when we have the new senior living facility being built, you're probably your older adult program requirements are probably gonna go.
They're gonna take off with the ability to actually put stuff on.
So that's why I
the
was just
there.
curious. I guess I wasn't. I didn't realize that that's your background. That's what you focused on when you were at Urbandale. Okay.
Well, and if I can piggyback on that, I was on the park board when Urbandale started to get into seniors, and what helped them may help Polk City. I would assume that when the new facility is built, there's going to be a community room in there. And the first thing that Urbandale did was when they converted the old library to a senior center, and when they wanted it to be recreation, it was basically where the people started coming in. It was open and for cards and things like that. And then after people started dropping in for the weekly cards, and they also did lunch meals there. After that started, then it started to blossom, and and it's grown to where it is now. And I also remember being on the board when they first started doing it. They were targeting the at-home people that never get out and things like that. But they found that when you were there, it started shifting when Lori Nagel was responsible. It started shifting to a younger population, the people in the 60s and 70s that wanted to do more. They were retired and they were looking for things to do. And so then the Parks and Rec started offering pickleball and bocce ball and stuff like that. So, but I really think that once the new center is built, you're going to have an opportunity to just to say it's drop-in card day or something like that, and you'll start seeing some of the seniors showing up or stuff like that.
yeah, and there are the library does also have a lot of senior opportunities here in town, and since the library department was here so long before me, they got to stake claim to some of that stuff. So no, they do have some pretty well regularly attended programs up there. Kind of like cards, coffee groups, stitching groups. So, Jamie's also helping out to make sure those seniors in town have opportunities.
I do have a funny story about the sit and stitch. So my daughter and her 5 friends crochet constantly. And they went one Saturday morning not realizing it was like a senior program. So these 6 13-year-old girls showed up and sat amongst all of these older women who were embroidering. Anyway, at the end, they were all like, "Oh, are you going to come back next Saturday?" So now my daughter and her 5 friends go every Saturday with their senior buddies and crochet and knit.
That's awesome.
Great.
Anyway, so I think there's value in considering some of that too. There's
So-
adopt a grandparent programs and
Some
stuff.
multi-generational stuff.
But
Absolutely.
there is a lot of need for stability. And I know you've mentioned that having senior programs that are predictable, that some of that went by the wayside when our community room
That
was
what I was
relinquished.
gonna ask was, do we have any ideas/plans for when we have our community back next door?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a really good opportunity to kind of work with the library and see if the new space isn't more conducive to some of the programs that have been going on up there. You know, they do cram a lot into that little room
Yes, they do.
off the atrium. So I see an opportunity for taking some things over to the new facility and really allowing them to grow.
Any other questions about the third quarter cost recovery? All right, number 7, update on the regional park project.
Yeah, so a few
You
things
want to
for
give
you.
me do you want me to give you a start since I put this on here? Or, okay, go for it.
No, I think things that are probably going to be new to some up here, things that have happened. I guess most of us knew that there is a water tower being planned for out at the site. That space that will be taken from that project it is not set in stone, but it is quite concise at this point. It is in the area that we thought it would be, kind of in between the parking and the soccer quadrant. It may affect the program as we see it on the master plan, but we will have the ability to shift some things east-west to make sure that we don't lose, a field.
So we're gonna keep 3 smaller youth fields. Excellent.
Yeah, they just may be shifted and not as symmetrical as I would like. So yes, that is there. Something that staff, mainly myself and City Manager Huseman, have been doing recently. We have been having some really good meetings with some fundraising consultants to see just exactly how that kind of service could benefit this project. We've had some really good conversations. We're getting proposals right now that we would compare and possibly go in a direction. That would likely consist of a feasibility study, which is almost, you call it like a pre-campaign. So they would talk to stakeholders. They would kind of get an opinion of this is what a capital campaign could look like in Polk City, an estimated dollar amount of what private, individual, company, things could look like and what that means for the project itself. So it's definitely the next step to do. I think it's something that council would like to see done. It kind of gives you a much better, we're out here, we have a grandiose idea right now. This really brings it in. It gives you an idea of what day to day, week to week looks out there. There are operating expenses that will come out of this feasibility study. And also, what the community would rally around, what that dollar amount is. And then, if it's not the amount we need, what are the options to make up the difference? So that's been a process that we've been doing recently. And then to go along with that, the last update, last Monday, council did amend the CIP, that 5-year plan, and they did push the regional park into the next fiscal year. So I wish I had somebody here to talk about it, but I think, long story short, I think there's enough questions right now that in all likelihood, it wasn't going to accomplish much to keep it in this year's CIP. So moving it to next year did allow some projects to come into this fiscal year. So we will see progress in other parks and rec amenities, mainly trails, this fiscal year with that large project getting pushed back
Another year.
another year. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. I just may not be the best suited since.
I commend you for seeking out a fundraising consultant, because that's really the crucial next step, I think, to figuring out how to be able to do this. $25 is a huge ask for our community of our size, and I've worked on lots of projects that require lots of fundraising, and that's usually one of the crucial steps. So I think that'll be great. Hopefully we can get a game plan for figuring out what the next steps are to figure out the financial side.
I know the grading is on hold with Kimberly,
Nap.
Knapp, sorry.
Yep.
How is that going to affect them actually locating and putting the trail through?
Sure. So, in a perfect world, the mass grading would take place before that. If it doesn't, we would, in all likelihood, have to do more localized grading, for that feature itself. We would have to have a plan for the entire, park to make sure that this component fits in. But yeah, I mean, you can piece the grading together. It's kind of like sewing two pieces of cloth together instead of having one piece of cloth. So we would, open ourselves up to possible issues when this grade meets this grade. It would be more beneficial if we did it all in one, same contractor, to identify any weak points. But if that's not possible, then we may need to patchwork it as we go forward.
Trying to think of the timeline as we try to meet up with what Polk County wants to do coming down from the. I don't know off the top of my head when they're gonna start that section.
That has not been set yet. I know they're still in advanced discussions with landowners.
Any other questions about the regional park project? All my questions are for council, so I don't know that I have any. All right, number 8, discussion of the park commission action plan. This is mine. Jason printed off a copy that's in front of you. I know that I stated this in multiple occasions, but this is literally a copy and paste job of all the things that have previously been mentioned. I am neither owning nor married to anything that is in this document. My goal with the document was to give us a starting place to have discussion. So this isn't a voting item. This isn't necessarily a chance for us to even decide what we do and don't want to keep or anything in here. Really, my goal today was to just present this as a place to start in our discussions of setting goals and being more action oriented instead of waiting for things to come to us, and trying to drive the conversation and movement around our parks. There are kind of 4 big parts of this so far. The first one is definitions. And those definitions are largely taken from our city code. The next part is the planning and input process. And again, these are all of the pieces that currently have been discussed in public record, or are a part of city code and references our Parks and Recreation work, or our Parks Commission. And then the other parts of that planning and input process are just the different pieces that we've shared out of what we would like to see happen, what the council would like to see happen in that work session. And then under roles, responsibilities, and foci, those are all of the things that we talked about in our previous CIP conversation, as well as things that we've said in the work session with the council that we would like to kind of take the bull by the proverbial horns as Parks Commission members. Ultimately, my goal is to move to steps 4, 5, 6, which are really the action processes. But before we start breaking things down and taking action steps, we kind of have to know and agree on the first 3 components of it, namely the roles and responsibilities and foci. The other parts I've really just taken from their code 4 minutes. So unless there's something else to put in there in the planning and input process, the bigger pieces are going to be finding some clarity from us on roles, responsibilities, and foci, and then moving forward with goals and objectives so we can have actionable work. Is this something we are interested in looking at and discussing for a future commission meeting? There are many other towns that have an action plan similar to this. I took this particular format from Greeley, Colorado. So it appears online as if this particular action plan format for any sort of city government sub-council or sub-commission is pretty common. The real question is, do we want to have a master plan? Do we want to have goals and objectives and steps that we're going to try to follow? Our main role listed in the council is to advise and recommend to the council. I just don't know how we advise and recommend without having goals and things that we want to focus on, which was the impetus for creating this. So again, I'm going to open the floor for discussion with the caveat of, I'm not married to this. If we scratch it and throw it out, it's fine. If it's something we really do want to be action oriented and pass on to the council to state our intentions, I'm good with that too. But we need to decide whether it's something we even want to bring up in future meetings and move forward with or not.
Well, I commend you for going through this. I know you kind of geek out over this stuff.
I
but
do.
That's a lot of work to do. So nice job. And I am always a fan of having a plan. You know, I think it's good to have goals and to make sure that you're in alignment. So, is city code the right place? Like, would this be an amendment to the city?
Nope,
itself
so
then,
this would
or-
just be a document that we would share
Okay.
with council. So
Okay.
all the city code that's related to Parks and Rec and to the Parks Commission is in the planning and input process.
Okay.
There wouldn't be any amendments to code. It would just be a document that we're sharing with council as what's driving us.
Okay. Got it.
And to get feedback of, hey, we're glad that's driving you, but we need to move this back on the CIP, so revamp your goals. More than anything, it's a communication tool between us as commission members and us to the council and back.
Well, and I think the 5 year is great because it aligns our 5-year terms, 5-year CIP. I don't think it hurts any to try to revisit this every 5 years to make sure that we're on par. We should do it.
But it sounds like we're trying to craft what it is we should be doing, right?
Yeah.
So, if I may, so cut me off, Chair. So back up a little bit, and again, I don't have the history that a lot of other folks have here in the room. Again, it seems like the roles and responsibilities of this commission was a lot more diverse when there was no dedicated parks director, correct? Once a position was created and fulfilled, it seems like there was kind of an identity crisis of what is the roles and responsibilities of the park commission now, correct?
Correct.
So, again, I'm a big fan of, not reinventing the wheel. How do other, cities, other what have you, how do they participate in this same relationship, and what are their roles and responsibilities? I'm all for building something out. I just don't want to build something out just to build something. I want to do what's right. I want to respect Jason. I mean, he's a value asset to our community, and he does quite a bit. And I don't want to create a lot of artificial hoopla just to create it.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Jump into his budget process.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't benefit us, and it probably hampers everything. But I agree. I want to do more too. I totally want to do more. So I guess I don't have the insight to how other cities run with a dedicated parks commission and a parks director. I would be curious to see. I would like to know how they interact and what their roles and responsibilities are, and kind of glean something from there to see if we should, maybe, I don't want to say steal, but borrow some good ideas from them, rather than start from scratch. I agree with Monica. I'm glad that you did this. I'm glad I wanted to confirm that on page 14 you have Jeff Walters' comments from our working session in there. So thank you very much, because I had not seen that, and that's probably because of my fault. But again, my vote would be, I would like to understand what the relationship should be, or how other cities are handling.
Well, I
That
can
would be
jump
a
in.
Larry Jason question.
I can jump in about Urbandale, because they had a director the entire time that I was on the board, and the way they worked it, Jan, the director, came to the board with the projects that she thought were needed, or through the word of mouth from the city or different, and listed it. And then we, as a park board, talked about that, and at some point, we made some recommendations that then went forward to the city. But, there wasn't a lot, of us as the park board commissioner, or park commission, making in terms of coming up with goals or anything like that. That came from the director, and then we talked about it. So, for instance, the swimming pool was an issue that we had for several years, and she would bring that issue, the swimming pool, to us as a commission, and present us with the facts about the swimming pool in terms of the cost and things like that. And we actually, at one point, like 2 years before the council took action, we as a commission made a recommendation to close the swimming pool, because we looked at all the facts and figures. We turned that information over to the council, and the council turned around and said that they didn't want to take the heat from the community about that, and they said that they weren't going to do that. They were going to continue having the pool open for another 2 years. I think what they made a motion that if anything comes in that's going to cost more than $5,000, or something, or they had a figure that then they would consider possibly closing it, and that's what eventually happened. The heater went out, and they said, well, we can't afford to do that. So it was more, the information came from the director, and then we as a board, tossed it around. And then we also had an opportunity to weigh in on some of the projects that eventually would go to the CIP. So then we would say, well, we'd like Park X to be worked on before Park B, and so that was our involvement also in terms of making recommendation about that. And then we also made recommendations about trails. That she would come to us with, and with the information about new trails that were down the road going to be built, and there was a couple times where we said we thought that this trail section should be worked on before this other section. So that it was more the director came to us with the information than us going to the director.
I think those are actual places where we would step in and do stuff, where if you came to us with a few ideas about programming out ahead of time, maybe we can chat over those, but I don't know what to chat about. I think your programming thus far has been great. So, but yeah, being able to sit down with council and talk about things like where the trails are. I know there was a lot of chat about how they were going to connect the town square down to the section of trail down by Kiwanis, and that one ended up being more decided by what was a public safety. Didn't really have much say. I don't know if you had much say in how that was decided either, but yeah, to be able to chat about how that stuff goes through, have input there, I think that is actually something that should be part of our role, talking about where the parks are and what priorities happening in the parks should be.
So Larry, if I may, so how was that relationship then received amongst everybody in there? I mean, from the commission members to city council?
There was at least one and maybe two of the commission members on the CIP. So when it came up with the CIP, when they came, you had an opportunity then to represent the park commission at the CIP, and to kind of say why you thought that this particular line item should be in the CIP, in the upcoming years. And so there was a communication there, that from the commission also onto the CIP, because the CIP had like two board members, two council members. There was a wide variety of people on the CIP, and so because I served on that 1 year, I was able to talk about when it came time to put it about Parks and Rec. I was the one that was able to say some things about Parks and Recs and why this is needed. And then there was somebody there that represented city engineering, and they did the same thing about roads. And then the council then took that information back, and that's how they made the final CIP.
So
Maybe that's one of the driving questions that we don't have answers to. How is it dictated when there's a discussion about trails? Why is that going directly to council instead of Parks and Rec when that, I don't know who sets that in motion at all. I'm not saying it's you or anyone else in particular, but maybe that's a real question instead of creating a roles and responsibilities document. Maybe it's asking,
Well, no, I mean, that could be a valuable, I think you're onto something there, Ashley. I mean, there could be a roles and responsibility. And should city council be consulting us on trails and such, rather than doing it without our input, right?
Yeah, and
same thing with like a water tower too. We found out about that far.
I think
Well, that's more of an infrastructure type
Not if
thing.
it's going in the middle of a park though. It'd be nice to know that so we could make plans for where soccer fields are gonna get moved or
it's
whatever.
one thing to be ruled about us if we decided, no, we don't want that in our park. But it's another thing to
Not be
just be
consulted.
presented with a fait accompli.
Yeah, again, because I don't believe we were consulted about it.
And it not advancing the park as a part of like a sub-project associated. So I think the point maybe that needs to be made is what expectations does the city council have of us and what expectations do we have of the city council? That's something that I think needs to overarching made more than
Right.
clear.
Yeah.
But when we left that work session, that was what they tasked us with, was
Figuring out
come up
what
with
our
a
role
list of
is
roles
supposed
and
to be.
responsibilities to present to them
And
for approval.
But
So,
I think when we send that up, the conversation we had was there has to be a reciprocating response
Mhm.
that's in kind and has the same weight.
yeah. And I just wrote down having a representative on CIP conversations for all commissions and boards like that.
I'll speak to that. I had actually sat in last time they wrote the CIP, and I mean, they had representatives from all the different departments, and I think this predates you by just a little bit. Yeah, I don't know, I don't think you were there. When they did the voting on all of their projects, so they had representatives from all the council members, from police, from fire department, that had all their projects presented. And then they went around and voted and tallied up stuff. And there wasn't anybody from Parks as far as I remember. I don't remember if there was, if Jamie was there representing the library or if there was anybody from P&Z. But I'm fairly certain there was nobody there from Parks. So, yes, I imagine Jason's going to have a seat at the table this time, but I would also like to see Commission have a seat at the table. Can they do that?
And again, if I
We're
can-
digging into this more and fleshing it out in the future meeting.
That should definitely
That's
be
really just the
one of
item on the
those.
table.
Yeah.
Do we
Okay.
want to put it on as an agenda item for our November meeting?
Should we maybe break it down into sections so it's more just want to bite off?
Could we,
It
as
is
a,
up to everybody.
yeah,
how
as
we
a
wanna move
takeaway,
forward.
could we take this back, digest it, and then have a action item where we determine exactly what we're gonna do, so we know? Or do you wanna pick something right now?
I guess for I don't know. Help.
I would think
I don't know what
I
we
would
put on
think
the next
taking
one.
taking a step back from where we're at right now, after we've had a chance to process what we think some of our directions are. Take a step back. Everybody think about what some of the roles we want to have.
Yes.
Send them into Jason or into Ashley and get them on the next agenda, maybe to further discuss and I don't know, vote if we're going to.
So read sections 1 and 2, just to give yourself background. And the agenda item to be discussed at the next meeting would be looking into the roles, responsibility, and foci that would want to drive our work.
And then maybe in the meantime, we could have some information next time about how other communities handle it.
I
and
am
hear the
happy to
details
gather
perspective. That was
some
helpful, I think,
examples.
so.
I think any of us can get that, but instead of mass email, send it through Jason or through
Agreed.
one person.
Do
That
you
way.
have any peer contacts and other?
Oh, absolutely. No, you guys were having great conversations, so I just
I
wanted
mean,
to
I
step in.
did, I mean, that's the thing, I mean, I
Sure.
don't wanna dump it on you, but I would like to see if you could reach out to some peers.
Sure, and I have. Trust me, I know this relationship. It is truly a two-way road, and I've been trying to figure out with my cohorts how to make this more productive on all sides. You know, all I can say with parks, or excuse me, positions I've had and people I've talked to, a park commission, a Parks and Rec commission, whatever you call it, it is not a one size fits all. Different towns have different responsibilities. Some have a lot more spending authority. Some are more just in an advisory role, and it is quite the spectrum. And you know, even Larry being in two different, you know, I think he can attest that no two are probably the same. So, you know, I certainly can reach back out to, and it might behoove me to reach out to some similarly sized communities instead of the metro this time. Just because, you know, we don't have the budget or the project list that an Urbandale or a West Des Moines has. So, you know, our actionable items may always be just a little bit more infrequent.
Yeah, like a Bondurant and Adel,
Right.
Carlisle.
Yep.
And they have similar access to resources that we have in that they do have a lot of metro trails that extend out to their areas, but don't necessarily have the population or commercial tax base that
Mhm.
some of the actual suburban communities would have.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to reach out to some of my colleagues and get you guys some examples.
And maybe Huxley specifically.
Yeah.
Only because
Absolutely.
Huxley has many of the same challenges that we do, and I know that tax base wise, they're not too far off from us. So that would be a community that I'm particularly interested in seeing.
Sure. In an ideal world, how much do you want us stepping in your budget process?
None.
I was
That's
gonna
it.
say,
I think
I
that's
don't
the- I
think.
think
No,
that's the
I mean,
ask.
I
But
wouldn't
it's-
want
it's
to.
something that's
I
in-
don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, Jason is the subject matter expert. I'm not. So I don't think we should be.
And that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I will say and again, I'm not trying to get into the weeds here in discussion, but where it says capital development, I'm specifically talking outside of the existing Parks and Rec budget and CIP that is already driven by council, city manager Huesman, and Jason. So I'm talking about like working with fundraiser committees, applying for additional grants that we might find. And he doesn't have the time capital to be working on things. Partnering with other parks boards to see how they funded X, Y, or Z project. I'm talking about the beyond portion of budget. I don't think legally by city code we have any influence over the budget, is my understanding.
I believe that is correct.
So it doesn't matter how bad we want to be a part of that or don't want to be a part of that. I don't think we legally have access to that
There was
authority.
There was verbiage in here about presenting budgets to council.
Yeah, and that,
I don't know.
I was just
how
going
to
beyond,
do that.
like, projects beyond, like, hey, if we did this and we modified the city park, here could be an alternate pathway to pay for it. We already did some of those budgeting when we did our master plan too, where we said, hey, here's the way. But again, that's not any spending authority. That's crafting what something would look like as far as cost wise.
I apologize for not being at the meeting that we had with the council and the commission. Got the wrong time. But at that meeting, did the council, was that question posed to them in terms of how do they view the commission, the Parks Commission, and what was the answer to that? Or,
It was posed, that was the primary question posed to them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they honestly said to us, we're not sure, come up with something and send it to us.
well,
Would that be
I
a
think
fair?
they agreed too, especially because, you know, when
An identity crisis, I feel like
Yeah,
that is.
no.
especially now that we have Jason
Yeah.
here, which we did
Yeah.
before.
There's,
we need to
again,
redefine that.
like I said, I heard that phrase identity crisis, but you're totally correct in what you said. There's a lot of ambiguity, right? Not knowing. I guess my only comment that I hope, doesn't land on deaf ears is I don't want us to, go back and think of something, but I don't think we should artificially create something if something's not there. Again, we don't need to be creating stuff just to create stuff. If something sounds valid, I think we should create something. I'll do my due diligence and review if I see something, but I'm just gonna say, I don't wanna create something to create something, if that's fair.
But that could be, when we discuss next week, our next meeting,
Yep,
that
yep.
could be the outcome,
Yep.
right? Once everybody has a chance to read through and see examples and such, that very well may be our outcome. But
The flip side of that, not creating something to create something, is that as we stand right now, our two main jobs are to provide oversight to what Jason's doing.
Yep.
Great. And then I don't want to call it rubber stamping what's happening. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes. So I think we need some kind of larger defined role
We need
than
a
just what we're
commitment
doing
from
right
city
now.
council to listen to our recommendations. And to
give
include
us
us in
a
the
chance
conversation.
to make a recommendation.
And that's
So,
something more.
But
That's where I
but
see a lot of
why-
this devolving into, is unless we have a commitment for them to include us and be attentive to our suggestions, we're spending.
So I don't wanna take a bunch of time, but just to back up, you said, listen to our recommendations. I'd be hard pressed that they wouldn't listen. Have we had any recommendations that they wouldn't listen to?
I don't know that either.
Okay,
What I'm
so
saying is
I
that-
just,
Well,
again, I feel like that we're kind of, it's a slippery slope, right, of just trying to, I mean, I agree with Nick, I agree with everybody. We don't wanna be up here just to rubber stamp, right? And maybe we can get creative and think of some sort of partnership where, we're doing some sort of figuring out community outreach for the parks and rec and things like that. Maybe let's think outside of the box so much normal black and white, so.
Part of that listening to our recommendations is giving us the opportunity to make those recommendation rules right back to things like water tower. We were just presented with a fait accompli.
well,
So
and
just
I think that the idea of making recommendations, that the council, as Polk City grows, there's gonna be more opportunities for them to, I suspect that back when were smaller, they were used to making all the decisions, but as Polk City grows and you have more people in the community, they're gonna need to have input from other sources, and that's how I could see our role increasing in terms of the amount of recommendations. And again, I know it's quite a bit bigger, but that's how Urbandale used it. The park commission made a recommendation, and then it went, because the swimming pool one was the only one in all the time that I was on the commission that they voted against that. All the other times, we would, be a new park, be it some rules, no smoking in the facilities, and it would go to the council, and the council would have that information that the commission has made a recommendation, and then the council actually was the one that rubber stamped it. They were taking our recommendations and voting it into place. And I could see that same thing happening here to Polk City as you start to grow and you have more parks and more trails to be considering. It would seem to be wise on the council's part to ask a group of citizens, what do you think about this? Or, should we allow bow hunting in a particular park? And we spent hours discussing that, and then it was a 2-minute discussion at the council meeting when they said, we're gonna have bow hunting in this
Because you
park.
did the legwork behind it.
Because the commission, we spent, discussion, about, what should be the bow hunting rules in our parks. And even though there were some citizens there that didn't want it, the council took our recommendation and said, the park commission feels that this is a safe thing to do. We're gonna have deer hunting for, in this X park. And so, eventually they're gonna start asking for more recommendations from this group.
If I may piggyback off Larry, I just kind of want to highlight some actionable items that you guys have done in my tenure. And yeah, I agree with Larry. I think as we continue to grow and each development comes in with a parkland dedication, we get to work together to figure out what that park looks like and what's included in it. But when we did Lost Lake Phase 2, the commission was involved with selecting the playground equipment that was there. Some of your feedback did change what was originally proposed. We did work together on, and again, none of these are super sexy, but when it comes to policy, policy and rates and things that go on in the parks, we did revamp our rental structure that I know you guys did a lot of work on in these meetings. And then most recently, when we did discuss user fees at the sports complex. There are 3 things that were sent to council with your approval, and they happened. They took your recommendation and didn't really think twice about it. But I agree, some of those actionable items right now are very few and far between. But I do echo Larry's sentiment there that as we grow, I think there will be more opportunity, and maybe there is a talking point as to when my department, this commission, does get involved with the parkland dedication piece. That is something that I've also asked questions about. So,
Or park usage, parkland usage. All right, so, Jason, I request that you, put the discussion of some sort of action plan, roles and responsibilities onto our next agenda for November, please. So, reports and particulars, number 9.
I guess I'll go first really quick. This past weekend was really busy on the square. I hope you guys got to come down and enjoy it. I think we had our largest movie in the park to date on Friday night.
There's so many people there.
A lot of people there, so that was great. And then, follow that up with the Friends of the Parks did one of their large fundraisers, Biketoberfest, Saturday morning. I believe the final count was larger than last year, so kudos to that group. And then Fall Fest took place from 3 to 7. I don't have numbers. We get that from the Des Moines Partnership based on pinging cell phone data. I should in all likelihood have that for the November meeting, so I can share there. But the square was the place to be this weekend. So thanks to everybody that volunteered or was just a part of the festival. And the only other thing that I really wanted to bring to you guys' view tonight, I've been working with Ken Morse and the Arbor League on a replanting strategy at Miller Park by the water tower. We did lose, I believe, 7 ash trees, and the park looks very different than it did. So we're doing kind of a cost sharing to get the most bang for our buck. We are working with a gentleman out of Granger that will spade in trees, so we'll get larger trees right away. So they're not going to be 40 foot tall when they put them in the ground, but they're also not going to be a 5-gallon bucket either. So that should be coming up pretty soon. There's 2 times in the year that you want to spade a tree, before it leaves and after it, it drops its leaves. So we're coming up on that fall planting season. And right now we're planning on putting somewhere in the 8 to 10 trees into the park. So it should look a lot more like its former self after this project.
Is there, has there been any communication with Friends of Parks about those trees? Because I know that tree dedication or in memorandum is one of the options that they have. Maybe this could be a start to kind of kick that off, hey, we have this park
Sure.
that needs trees. If there's already a cost sharing happening, maybe that'd be a good thing for them to throw out or for us to throw out online too.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Especially if they're bigger trees and there isn't as much of a risk of them not
surviving.
making it.
Yep. That's all I have.
So I do have a couple things. Number one, going back to roles and responsibilities of this commission, I would like us to consider or talk to you, I don't know the best way to do this, to get in touch with our landscape architect firm that worked on the master plan for the regional park and see if there is any way that we can come up with a plan B, C, D, E, and F for at least doing something with that regional park. I am to the point where I am nerve wracked about going to our sports complex on the weekends and the evenings. And I don't know if there is a mechanism to say, NAP, I understand because of interest rates that you don't want to grade that whole thing, but if we are putting in the bike trail, could we grade part of it? And I understand in long term it's going to be more expensive, but soccer fields need 2 years before you can play on them. Can we grade that initial top layer and at least get something started to relieve our existing sports complex? I just think that it's time that we start figuring out that, like Monica just said, $25 million is a big bite. But what if we could do something for $5 million?
Well, I think the issue is though, Ashley, I don't think we know how much money we have. And I think, I was in the working session, I believe Nick was too, earlier last month when Chelsea made the recommendation to the city council to engage a fundraiser and do all that sort of stuff so we could actually have some sort of idea. I think what you're asking is kind of putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak. I think until we actually know what type of funds we're going to have and be able to allocate in something like that, you're throwing good money.
So there is money in the budget for the parks. They've set aside $2 million in the budget to start. And that start seems like it's supposed to be the grading. If that's now pushed back to 24-25,
Well, yeah.
yeah, the 24-25 fiscal year. I mean, that's got to be the starting point is pushing on that grading, and it would be great if council.
But even if we,
when Nap
again, I don't want to
says
get
that's
us
okay.
too far ahead. Believe me, I want something too, but I think we have to detach some of the emotions with it, right? Again, if you're going to have an option A, B, C, D, E, F, your grading options are going to be completely different. You don't want to start grading on something that's going to be totally different, right?
Well, we can't.
It's
No. I'm not talking about redesigning the whole park. I'm talking about options A, B, C, D, E, F about getting the park completed.
how to phase
How to,
these
how to,
things.
I think what we need to do is see what the results are of this feasibility study and then
From
talk to
the
consultant about.
from the fundraising.
Yes.
Yes,
So we
I
can
agree.
easily achieve X millions of dollars or whatever, and then go back to the Confluence, I think it was, right, that did the master plan and say, okay, here's what we want, how much our budget is for phase one of however many, what can we get accomplished?
But again, we would have to make a recommendation to city council to spend money, right, to go back to Confluence to get.
It's gonna cost.
Because
more
no matter what we
contract,
do, it's going to cost money. So again, my opinion is let's wait to see what this engagement shakes out to be, and then have the next step conversation.
so we need to go back just a little bit. Because I brought that up not as a discussion item, but because I want to have that discussion. So it is not on our agenda today. So
Okay.
I don't think open records law wise, we're supposed to actually make decisions or have in-depth conversations about an item. So I'm bringing that up more as a particular that I want to have a real discussion around.
But didn't you ask Jason to go do it?
No. I said I would like to have
Okay.
a conversation
Okay.
about, I would like to discuss.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's, my understanding is that's how we get something added to a future agenda, right?
Yes, I think from a legalese standpoint, again, something
And I
that,
don't know illegalese. I'm learning.
That's okay, me
No.
too, me too. You'll
no,
notice I keep looking back at Jason like, am I saying this properly?
for something to appear on a future agenda, it needs to be something that the commission wants to see. It can't be something that an individual wants to see. You'll kind of see it at the end of council meetings. A certain council person will say, I'd like to see this on a future agenda. It's not a formal yes, no, it's kind of a consensus of what the day says at that point. So, just gathering what y'all said there, it seems like everybody's interested in that topic. So that alone should be enough to
Okay.
put it on for future discussion.
And I think maybe with that, based on the feedback that we just got, would there be any sort of timeline for what that feasibility study would look like? Just so that maybe we can get a timeline in our head of like, where does the cart come? Where does the horse come? And thinking, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know anything about a feasibility study, so I don't even know how long that takes. Or do we hire someone before they do the study? Do they do the study and then it's like putting in a construction bid? Now you have to follow through on this. I don't know how any of that works. So some more information kind of on both of those things.
Sure. Each firm has its own timelines. Some will.
No, I mean like for a future agenda. You don't have to like dive in right now. It's like
Sure,
an
sure.
hour into our meeting. I'm not trying to like keep everybody
Sure.
here for days. I just, maybe others know more about that than I do. But again, I'm trying to get to the point where we can have actionable recommendations for council that are productive and also fiscally sound, reasonable and rational. But I don't feel like I have the information to even start somewhere on what that would look like. Do you have the information from personal experience that it's gotten to the point where I'm nervous? And maybe it looks like looking at other open green space around town where we put up fences or goals or something. We have got to find a way to relieve some of the usage stress in that area. It's not just the field usage, it's the actual safety concerns. And so I just would like to spend some time on that at our next.
I agree too.
Any other questions, comments, things you want to add to future agenda items?
Well, I would like to, I'm curious, in if you could, also for the discussion item, how Grimes did their soccer, because the way I read it in the paper, the new Grimes complex is a partnership between the city and an individual, right? A developer.
I think
And-
some
And that, in
things.
fact, that developer, wasn't he the one that drowned in the, at the Sailorville boating accident? I thought I made the connection, or somebody said that his name came up and he was the developer. So anyway, I'm curious how that all developed, how a developer comes in and wants to develop soccer fields for income source, and then the city works along with that. So I'd just be a little curious how that all works out, or
Sure.
how that.
I mean, I can give a really quick, brief synopsis, and I do believe some things have changed in that agreement. But as the project started, costs of the project were taken care of by the private developer, and at a certain point would be deeded over to the city of Grimes. And I believe from the word go, Grimes would be on the hook for all the O&M that went into the park. And then at a certain point, it would be deeded over to the city of Grimes. I think some timelines of that have changed, and I think some of the involvement, I don't know all of the absolute, things about it, since it's not my project, but that is how it started, with private dollars getting it going and the public benefiting from it. So, I mean, certainly those are becoming more and more common, is the public-private partnership in creating something like this. So, that's obviously an option too that we have looked into. It just a private player of that size hasn't come forward yet. And,
But I mean,
so
I would be, I guess maybe that's a conversation or a question for council, and I don't know if we specifically send it to our council liaison or how that works, but maybe that's a question. How long do we sit here and wait for NAP if that's not gonna happen for 10 years? Right? Like, is saving that money when we have to wait for 10 years and we're investing infrastructure in our other parks that are temporary? I don't know that answer, but I'd be really curious if NAP would be interested in a partnership like that, or if maybe that's not a partnership that we want to pursue and we just want to say, forget you, NAP, we're going to move forward. I don't know any of those answers, but those would be questions I would love to ask to council members. why aren't we trying to do more to, could we move part of that development along instead of all that development that they would have to mass grade? I'd be very curious about what options we could maybe put on the table to NAP instead of just taking the options NAP has given us. I have no idea if I'm overstepping my bounds right now, just so everybody knows, but my palms are sweating because I'm very nervous that I just said something I wasn't supposed to say.
Twice if you're lucky.
That's who saw it that first
Marriage
time.
advice taken. Just kidding. Anything else? Reports, particulars from commission members.
Well, I was gonna, Nelson won't take a look. Has Polk City ever considered, applying for, bicycle friendly community? The League of American Wheelmen offer this, where you basically tell what your community's doing, and then the League of American Wheelmen read your report, and then, and it's typically bigger cities that do it. It's like Des Moines is a bicycle friendly community, and then they put that out on their literature. Well, I happen to just get their newsletter, and it mentions right here, it says, City of Walker, Minnesota is a silver, they have 3 levels, silver, bronze, and gold. And Minneapolis happens to be a gold one. It's communities that are really into the bicycling and things like that. But it mentions this Walker, Minnesota, and it says it's a population of 900. That says small lakeside city boasts an impressive trail network and saw an opportunity to attract more cyclists to visit their community by using the scenic trail system. And then it says they worked with the Leech Lake Community Chamber of Commerce, recruiting businesses along the trails to become more bicycle-friendly businesses. So I'll send you, and obviously there's paperwork involved, and I'll go on record if I'll be willing to, to work with. But it seems to me that that's something, it's similar to like Polk City does with the arbors, that you have a sign out there that you tell people that you're a tree city. If you qualified and get a bicycle friendly community, that would be something that we be out there promoting, and it seems to me that we're doing an awful lot already with this past weekend and the Friends of the Park and things like that. And it's personally, from what I've read about these other communities, I think that it's just something that we could capitalize on, and
What was that?
in terms of getting some publicity out there about what Polk City has to offer.
No, I'd be really
So
happy to.
I'll book to you and Chelsea. I'll send some.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That's a good idea. All right, anything else for the good of the cause? All right, I will take a motion to adjourn until November 6th. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.